Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings.
My greetings.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler. Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 169 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. From the Maelstrom, Louisiana, it's me, Appa. From Gadgetzan, New York, it's Ridiculous Hat.
I forgot I wasn't anchoring, wasn't ready to talk. Hi!
There it is. And from Karazhan, California, it's Bodikus.
Hi.
And joining us, back for the first time in forever, our special guest this week from Orgrimmar, Illinois, it's Cora.
Hi,
She's back.
guys. Long time no see.
I know, it's been
We missed you.
forever.
I missed you guys too. Busy,
It's always
busy.
great to have you back on. This is gonna be sweet.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, this is going to be a good episode. But before we get into the episode, just want to remind everyone that Coin Concede is supported in large part by you, the listener. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/coinconcede. And really big shout out to Viriatus for upping his pledge to super producer. So welcome back to the super producer role, Viriatus. We thank you. That's it means a lot, and we're glad to have you around.
Man.
Sorry, that was a troll soundbite.
I think Hat has some questions for Cora.
Oh,
Yes.
we're going right into that? Okay.
We
cool.
are. We want to talk to you. You're
Sounds
special.
good.
We're here
Talk
every
to
week.
you guys.
Well, great. Then we
Hi.
should record that and put it out for the.
Maybe put it on the
And
internet.
Put it on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should cast it to pods. Hi, Cora. It's not a question, but how
Hi,
are you?
Hat. I'm good. How have you been?
Doing okay. It's 2019, and I cleaned my monitor, so I'm feeling pretty in control of the new year.
Yes.
Pretty exciting, you know. So, for the people who are living under a rock, tell us who you are in the Hearthstone scene.
Okay. My name is Cora Georgiou, and I am one of the original creators of this very podcast, actually, which is fun. I started it with my friends Kenny and Kevin from my dorm room when I was still in college, and I've been out of college for over 2 years now, so that was a while back. Like Hat said, I haven't been a regular part of this podcast for several years, but I'm always happy to guest when I can. And I haven't been on it regularly because I've been making a full-time commentary career for myself in Hearthstone and in most recently the Pokemon trading card game as well. So you've seen me on programs such as TESPA Hearthstone Collegiate. I've stage hosted for the Hearthstone Championship Tour in the last year. I've casted playoffs. I host and commentate DreamHack events. I did all 10 of them, or all 6 of them in the previous year, and then 4 of them in 2017. I'm all over the place, basically. If you watch competitive Hearthstone, you've probably seen me.
Yes, and since we are a podcast about tournament Hearthstone, and you do the tournaments, I'm assuming that most of our audience is familiar with you, and yes, you did in fact make this podcast. I looked it up. The last episode you were a regular host on, episode 71, February 8th, 2017. This was the episode where some news items. F2K signed Nicolina to their roster. We were discussing the rumored April set Lost Secrets of Ungoro. Yes, they were found eventually. The Trinity Series Round 3 had just concluded. Complexity as a team was 3-0. G2 and Luminosity were right behind them at 2-1. EU Winter Playoffs were that weekend. The format was largely solved. You usually brought 3 Patches decks and a Kazakus decks, but some players went off meta with either Anyfin Paladin or Jade Druid. So, it's been a little bit.
February 2017.
Kind of crazy.
Jeez. I had just graduated college a couple months back, and this was my first go out into full-time commentary. So I was doing TESPA at that time. I think that was my first full TESPA season.
And there was a DreamHack tournament as well that I think you did just around that time.
My first DreamHack event was DreamHack Austin 2017. So whatever that was, I don't remember exactly. But yeah,
Yeah, that was
probably
in-
around then.
I think that was in April
Was that in
2017.
April? Okay, dang.
So
A lot has changed since then.
So I think some of the luxury of having you on the show and of having you be an integral part of the Coin Concede experience is you can kind of reflect and give us some insight into what has it been like being in this role and changing your personal life to cast and travel and work this much in the past couple of years. What has the journey been like? How has it changed how your personal life operates?
How my personal life operates, quite significantly. So like I said, when I started, I was in college. I was just doing the podcast for fun because, the old team that I was on knew that one of the original hosts, Kenny, wanted to start a podcast, and I had a broadcast background, so they thought, "Hey, Cora's perfect. Why doesn't she do it with him?" So this was just something that I was doing, I guess, to have some wider range of broadcast experience. I'd never done a podcast before, but I thought it would be fun, and I love talking about Hearthstone. So at that time, I was full-time college student, not a competitive Hearthstone player, really, not yet when I started Coin Concede. So yeah, I mean, since then, I've graduated college. I now am a full-time broadcaster. So essentially, it means that my whole life revolves around work and revolves around travel primarily because, um, as a contractor, which means that I do not work specifically for one entity. I contract for event by event basis to whatever company wants to hire me. So I work for Blizzard. I work for third party tournament organizers like DreamHack, like Esports Arena, like WESG, things like that. And basically, it is quite difficult to have a very flexible personal life when your travel schedule is so intense. So I spent probably about half this past year away from home. Various locations. I spend most of the time in California, but I've been to Europe, I've been to Asia, I've been to Canada a couple of times now. And basically, I'm traveling several weekends out of a month, which means I get to see awesome places, I get to meet wonderful people, and I get to work with incredible production companies. But on the other hand, you don't have as much time for family. I'd love to have a dog, but I don't have enough time really to get or train a dog at this point because I travel so much. It's little trade-offs here and there, but I'm only 23 years old. I love what I'm doing, and I want to focus on building my career for now, and then let some of those other things come in the future. But for now, I'm just trying to work as much as I can.
And you're also everything is about trade-offs, right? So while you may not have an adorable puppy, which is unfortunate,
No problem.
but
I have
you
a very old cat.
yes,
He's good.
yeah, the podcat.
He does well.
We're
Yeah, I
familiar
have
with
the
the
podcat.
podcat. Yes.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah. Oh yeah.
But also you get to travel, you get to be a part of this pretty incredible journey. So it's just about choices. It makes sense that you're able to kind of pursue this dream, and it's working out pretty well for you because you're working a lot. And
Yeah.
what's that visibility been like? What's it like being kind of this public figure, this fixture for Hearthstone, and not just Hearthstone, for Pokemon, which sounds awesome, by the way.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's been really difficult to get used to. So when I started, I started very slowly. I did a couple events here and there, and then after I graduated college, around February 2017, is when I really started full time Hearthstone commentary. And from then on, it's just been a constant, um, I guess, increase in workflow and increase in exposure. And I have a lot of people who place me on a very high pedestal in their opinion, and who love my work and appreciate my work and love my commentary, and that's amazing. And it's really incredible to be appreciated that way, and it makes all of my hard work valid, which is really fantastic, and I love that. But I also have a lot of people who like, how do I want to say this? A lot of people who put this like halo over my head that should not by any means be there. And I do think that it is partially because I am a woman, and a lot of women look up to me very highly. A lot of men look up to me as being, the woman that they would love to date, or the woman that they would love, their girlfriends or wives or sisters to be more like, because I do exhibit a lot of boyish qualities, I suppose, in my career, in my hobbies, and things like that. Um, so it's really weird to get used to like people thinking so highly of you, and loving your work and loving you so much when they don't really know you. Even though I do try to be as much of myself as I possibly can when I'm working and streaming and commentary and things like that. But also, there's a lot of people who just like really freaking hate you, and it's just this really crazy like split between adoration and like just complete loathing of your work and of the figure that you are and your appearance and whatever it may be. But like, I mean, it's entertainment. It's a very divisive role, and you just need to learn to, I guess, deal with the good and the bad at the same time, and learn to block out the people who don't like your work and who are never going to like your work, and instead pay more attention to the constructive criticism.
Yeah, it makes sense that that people comment on a projection of you that is created solely for the purpose of you're at work, right? When you're commenting on a match, that's your job and you're doing your
Mhm.
job, but then people engage with their belief of who Cora is, or their belief of what you could be if you were their friend.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, obviously, when I'm commentating, I try to inject as much of my personality into it as I can. But, I have to be very professional. I have to be very confident, very poised. And I'm not by any means always like that. Like right now, I didn't wash my hair today, so it's in a ponytail. My contacts are bothering me, so I'm wearing glasses. I've had this sweatshirt since I went to camp before the 8th grade. Like this is very much Cora on like an average day. Cora at a tournament is not just what you're always going to get. That's a best possible version of me, most professional version of me. But also like there's aspects of my personality that you don't get to see. I like a lot of other things other than Hearthstone that I just can't reference on broadcast. Music is a huge part of my life that you don't get to see when I'm broadcasting. I swear a lot, and obviously I can't do that when I'm broadcasting. So it's just like this idealist version of a person that they see, and then having to try and balance that. And a lot of it is because I don't see myself that way. I see myself still very much as being, you know, uh, like in my head, I'm still probably like 18 years old. I'm still just the person that I have always been, but now so many people know who I am, and it's really quite strange. Like I don't know, meeting fans in general, like it still hasn't happened for me. Just like rant at random in public. Like I haven't met anybody who knows who I am, but at events, very specifically, I get people who come up to me and who, um, their children are big fans of me. Their wives are big fans of me. I've had people cry when they meet me, and it's really weird. Like it's very flattering, but it certainly takes a lot of getting used to because I don't see myself that way still.
Man, that is something else.
It's weird, guys. My life has gotten so drastically different over the last 2 years. It's really
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah, that's something. And the Egocentric's asking in the chat, are you maybe the most employed caster or host in Hearthstone? Because you're pretty visible. There's the Dream Hacks,
Um,
there's the Tespas, and those like the Tespa and HGG from last year. You were on multiple days a week every week.
yeah, so I did all of HGG last year. TESPA usually runs for about 7 or 8 weeks, and I'm there 2 days a week. I don't know if I'm the most. I think the HGG, the British guys from this year might have me beat out a little bit because they were there. I think they did like 35 show days over a couple of months, which was insane. But I do certainly travel quite a bit more than the HCT casters. I think just because for a lot of them, playoffs and champs is their only workload for the year. Um, yeah, and the added fact that I don't live in California. I think I'm one of the only American non-California based Hearthstone commentators, so I do travel quite a bit.
And how has it been kind of balancing that with your personal content creation and anything you do that's not for Blizzard's brand?
mm, it's kind of difficult because you have to know so much about Hearthstone to be a top tier Hearthstone commentator that even when I'm not working, I'm still playing Hearthstone. And it feels like if I'm playing a game that's not Hearthstone, I'm kind of wasting time, because I'm not pursuing high legend ranks, which could help my brand have more credibility. I'm not making fun decks or, putting finishes and lists on Twitter, which could help my credibility. It feels like a waste of time almost, which kind of sucks sometimes because my hobbies are no longer my hobbies. And basically, the only other game that I'll play when I'm not playing Hearthstone is Overwatch. So basically, I'm a Blizzard shill all the time, but I do truly love the games that I play. So it's not all bad, but like personal brand wise, if I stream, I will only ever stream Blizzard games pretty much. I think I streamed like an hour of Pokemon TCG online once, and I haven't done it since then.
It's amazing how that kind of balances what personal time even means anymore, too.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason I think that I don't stream so much. If I was not casting as much, I think I would be much more open to streaming more frequently. But it's like if I'm home and I stream one day, after I'm done streaming, I'm like, yeah, you'll probably see me like tomorrow or the day after. Depends on what I'm doing, but I want to stream more. And then the day comes and I'm just like, my God, I don't want to play Hearthstone right now. But it's not really worth it for me to stream anything else because people know me from Hearthstone. People only want to watch. I have to play and educate on Hearthstone and essentially commentate what I'm doing. And then it just feels like I'm working again. And I'm working so much already that like when I'm home, I either need to take care of personal things like rescheduling all of the doctor's appointments that I miss when I'm away. Like I haven't been to the dentist in like 8 months now, and I need to go do that. I need to go get my contact prescription filled that I've had for the last 2 months and haven't had time to do. So it's like either I'm working or I'm working in another sense. And then like some days I just need to kind of fall off the radar and just like not have anything um like outside to do. So I try to keep up, but it is really tiring.
Yeah, well, and
This
there's...
is
Go ahead, Bob.
I think this is just really good, like getting to hear all this because I think a lot of people look at the casting gig in general and just think of, oh, I could do that. I could be under the bright lights and talk about games and sound really smart and know everything that's going on, and I would be such a good caster. And they don't really think about all of the extra stuff that goes into getting to be a good caster. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes, not even just in knowledge of the game and knowledge of being a caster, but just the having to be like a public personality and
Mhm.
just dealing with everything. It's just, I think it's really good that our listeners get to hear that there's so much more going on than just you go to you go to your casting
Yeah.
gigs and you cast and you're really good at it, and that's what people see is that you're really good at it, but they don't
Mhm.
see all of the work I think that's happens with a lot of things is they don't see all the work that gets put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly being at a DreamHack event and being on the desk and casting the Hearthstone is the easy part. It's the waking up at 5 a.m. to, get ready and put my makeup on because I know there's not going to be enough time for hair and makeup for a woman because they only block out 10 minutes per person. And there's no way they're going to full face of makeup me in 10 minutes. So
10
I have to do it
minutes?
myself. Yeah, they're not realistic when it comes to women in esports because there are so few women who are professional broadcasters in esports. So I end up having to do a lot of the work myself prior to events. So I wake up earlier than the men. I end up, being on my feet all day long. It's really draining and requires a lot of stamina because not just you're not just at the event for the days of the event, you're also traveling the entire day before the event, the entire day after the event. Then it's very likely that you're jet lagged and exhausted the day after. So you're blocking out about 2 or 3 days additional for every event that you're doing. And for a long period of time, I was back and forth between Chicago and California every single week. I would go 3 days in Chicago, 4 days in California, back and forth for 8 weeks of TESPA Swiss rounds. And then in between that, I had DreamHack. I had to do voiceovers for playoffs while I was there. Then I went down to WSOE last week. I was home for like 2 days of December before Christmas. That's it. I was gone the entire month. And it's great when you're that busy, because it means that you're making money, you're getting work. But at the same time, you desperately need that time off to be able to recoup and be able to focus on your mental health and your physical health. But then when you're not working, you're worried about, when am I going to get work? Because it's not a consistent 9-to-5 job where you get a salary every 2 weeks. You don't know when you're going to make money again, because you don't know for sure if you're going to get hired. And it's really stressful. Like right now, I don't know the plans for next year. I don't know how I'm included in those plans for next year. So I'm having to think to myself again, like, realistically, I know I'm going to be okay, but do I have to start looking at things outside of Hearthstone? Do I have to start looking at other voiceover work? Do I have to start looking at other hosting work? Do I have to start looking at production? Like, it's, you never know. Being a contractor is really hard.
I feel tired listening. And
I'm tired a lot of the time, Hat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even so, but looking at it now, so you've done this for 2 years. Even with all this stuff, you've managed to stake out steady work, even though in the process it feels like being a ball of anxiety at times. What's different now than when you started 2 years ago, as now that you're a veteran, now that you know what's up, besides getting up early and doing your makeup because 10 minutes come on?
So much. So when I started, I just didn't know what I was doing. I was a novice. I had very little commentary experience, and now I think that I have solidified myself as a staple of the Hearthstone commentary scene. People look up to me as being an expert and being somebody that they can trust for their commentary, whereas before that wasn't the case. So it's taken me it's actually almost been 3 years. My first event was like February 26. No. Yeah, like February 2016, I think it was actually. So it's almost been 3 years now since I started casting. And since then, my persona, like the way that the community perceives me, has just changed by leaps and bounds, which makes my job easier because the incoming feedback is so much better a lot of the time. And there's still negativity sometimes, but it does certainly help to be looked at and revered as one of the, and I'm doing very significant air quotes, good women in the scene. It's helped me to get over the stigma of being a woman and start to be known by my ability and not just by these preconceived notions that people have of me. So my job's gotten a lot easier.
Was that was the So You Think You Can Cast in 15? That was the group, what, Raven, Soddle, Kevin, I think, was in that group?
Yes, Kevin Hovdestad, Aquablad, D2, myself. It was December 2015, I think, that I got the call, and then I commentated winter playoffs in February of 2016. So it has been almost 3 years since my first gig now. And it feels like it's so much longer ago. But at the same time, it feels like it was just yesterday. It's very weird. The years are just so busy that it feels like it's been a long time.
Man, that was... So, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? What do you wish that you could tell post-grad Cora about what she's about to get into?
Well, I wish I was better with money. I still wish that I'm better with money.
Yeah.
But I'm learning. I'm getting there. It is hard not to be overwhelmed by a lot of it at times. So I would have told myself, one, don't fight with strangers on Reddit, because it never makes you look good, even if you're right. And I do love being right, but it just doesn't help.
That is the best advice I maybe have ever heard in this show.
Don't fight with strangers on Reddit, people. It doesn't help anything.
Could
Um,
probably change Reddit to the internet.
yeah, yeah. And then a lot of things about confidence. I never. So when I was in college, I was a broadcast major, but I wanted to be on the radio. I love working with my voice. I love reading scripted content, and I love basically just manipulating my voice. But I never wanted to be on camera. So I would have told myself to get more work on camera, and then I would have told myself, I guess I would have just started preparing myself for feeling like you're in high school all the time. Still,
Oh God.
yeah, and I didn't. High school was okay for me, but like people just always criticize you. They're always judging you, and that is what being a Hearthstone commentator is, or a commentator in indie industry, or anybody in the spotlight for any reason. People are just always judging you, and they're always going to criticize you, and they are going to find your biggest insecurities, and they are going to exploit them. So I would have just. I always told myself that I knew what I was getting into, but I didn't. So I would have just prepared myself a little better.
That makes sense. What was your favorite subject in high school?
Oh, I loved environmental science. I love science. But I was in science.
I actually just
That
asked
is
that
so well
question so I could
timed.
play that bumper.
Oh my gosh, I was a big music person too, though.
Yes. Still are. Am.
Still
am. Yes.
Still am.
And then what piece of advice, if someone said they want to be the next Cora Georgiou, they want to be a caster and break into the scene, what advice would you give to a person that was trying to be as successful as you have been?
Well, I tell them always, if let's assume we're talking about Hearthstone, they need to know the game inside and out. They cannot expect to be a good caster if they are not an absolutely phenomenal player. And I hold myself to a very high standard, and I try to prove myself at every possible opportunity. But I don't think you can be a commentator regularly. I don't think you can be a commentator if you don't have the cards to build every deck in the game. You just don't have the experience necessary, and that's hard to hear for a lot of people, but unfortunately that's just the way it is for Hearthstone specifically. For a lot of other games, you can be a host and not be the best player in the world. Like you can be a perfectly phenomenal Overwatch commentator without being a GM Overwatch player or top 500. But for Hearthstone, I just don't think that's the case, because Hearthstone has so much downtime and so much room for analysis. You need to know absolutely everything that is on. And then it's just a matter of putting in the time to practice. I was very lucky in that I have a bachelor's in broadcast communication. I have a decade of competitive public speaking experience. I very much had the background for this job that a lot of people don't. So they will need to work very, very hard to learn how to commentate, to learn how to use their voice, to learn how to inflect and how to appear on camera and work with hand gestures and work with appearance. It's not easy, but it's certainly something that can be taught. And it's certainly something that if these people want to do this, that they can work towards it. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it is going to take time.
And it's amazing how the point of doing all of that stuff, now that you've said all of it, we know that it's there, but your job is to make sure that we don't know that you're doing all of them. Your job is to make sure that we are unaware of the volume of work that you are putting into the casting that you're doing.
Yeah, it's to make it look easy and to make the viewing experience easier for everybody who is wanting to learn Hearthstone. My job is to teach these people and to hold their hand and walk them through what they're watching. And I love it because I wish I had somebody to do that for me when I was learning how to play Hearthstone, or when I was younger and learning how to play different card games. So it's a lot of fun, and it really is like the job that I never dreamed was even a job, because I had no idea when I was in college that this was something that I could aspire to, and I just lucked into it. So I don't take it for granted ever. Every single day I'm constantly trying to work to better myself and constantly trying to work to keep up with the rest of the competition, because it's a very competitive industry. Commentary is a much lusted after job right now, and there are people who are willing to put in incredible amounts. So you need to be right up there with them, or you do run the risk of becoming mundane.
Yeah, it's very easy to become almost obsolete as a caster because you make a good point. The volume of analysis required in Overwatch, the difference between a good player and a great player is mechanics, is the execution, is the ability. But in Hearthstone, analysis and ability are equivalent. So it makes sense that you have to be able to speak to that sort of thing. And it makes sense why, say, someone like Firebat can transition, or Zerek at the tournament this past weekend at WSOE, why I was able to analyze so clearly because he's played these lines out in his head a million billion times.
And there's also this really fine line that you guys, or you all as casters, have to really kind of manage, where you want to give like in-depth analysis and explain what's going on, but like you said, you have to hold people's hands, because I feel like casting is usually catered towards the people who are just tuning in for maybe the first, second time, or who don't play the game very much, and they don't really know what's going on a lot of the time. So you have to be very beginner oriented as well as providing high level analysis. And I feel like that's a skill that not a lot of people realize is going on.
Yeah, I tend to commentate for people like my dad, who understands the game, loves playing it, plays it all the time, doesn't know any of the names of any of the cards, and sometimes, needs a little bit of help on the higher level gameplay stuff. So occasionally you want to remind him, this is this card, you may not have seen it much, this is what it does. This is the basic goal of this deck. This is how this deck interacts with the opponent's deck. But then, you do want to be able to, at times, jump up to that higher level of analysis and commentate for, the competitive players who are watching. But the vast majority of the audience are not competitive players.
Does Papa Georgiou come up with like dad names for the cards? So you have dad nicknames?
No, he just refers to them by what they do.
Oh.
He's like, oh yeah, I want that 5 mana or the 4 mana 5/3 with overkill. What's that one? And I'm like, Ticket Scalper. And he's like, yeah, I had that card.
I was hoping for some dad nicknames, but it's
nah,
okay.
No dad nicknames here. But it is still good fun to try and figure out what he's talking about.
Yes, dad translation, almost as good.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of WSOE, by the way, you're not just a caster for Hearthstone, but you're also a player.
Yeah, I feel like so much of this interview so far has been me being like, this is really hard, and I'm tired, but it's really not. Like it is difficult, but it is so much fun, and such a joy. And if I wasn't commentating, I wouldn't have opportunities like I did at WSOE last, or 2 weekends ago now, the 20th and 21st, which was the most fun that I've had in such a long time.
So, first of all, tournament was amazing in terms of production quality. Like, of course, the tournament with all this money into production, you're a player, but what was it like to experience that environment, to see the kind of the glitz and glamour and the sheer value that went into producing everything there?
It was awesome. I'm used to more of a homegrown Hearthstone. The HCT Championship events are top-notch, absolute top-notch production. DreamHack, it's in a convention center. We're behind a tent. Sometimes we have a green room. Sometimes we just have a couch. We have our cool backdrop, but like it's nothing crazy. This was like straight up esports studio, top-notch hotel, top-notch treatment, like LED floors. They hired Bruce Buffer for the intro. It was insane. It was absolutely incredible, and it was so much fun to be on the player's side instead of the casting side for this one.
For those that aren't aware, because I wasn't aware, I just Googled Bruce Buffer. He is the official Octagon announcer for the UFC, and the guy that says,
the "Let's get ready to rumble" guy.
It's time. Oh my lord, that's amazing. And so you had all that time in these super comfortable hotel rooms to not sleep at all because they changed cards. So, so what was that like? What was your experience? When did you find out about the nerfs? How was your anxiety attack after? How did you decide what to play?
Before we get too far off Bruce Buffer, did he say let's get ready to Rosticon's Rumble?
No, he just said, let's get ready to rumble. I know.
That would have been so perfect.
I wasn't
know,
mad
it was
before,
awesome.
and I'm mad now. Ugh.
It was so sweet. Well, you said you had a lot of time to not rest. I was asleep when the nerfs were announced. I was one of the few players who, because I come from Central Time Zone over to Pacific Time Zone, it's only a 2-hour difference, but it is just enough that I go to bed quite early when I'm on the West Coast. So I think I was asleep probably by like 9 p.m. the night before the tournament. I'd submitted my lists. I was happy with everything. I spent the whole day working with my brother, with my friends Racy, Dr. J, and Shoop to try to figure out my lineup. Worked with Edelweiss a little bit, who you guys had on the show last week. And I was comfortable. I was confident. I was happy with everything. I put out a tweet that said so, and then I went to sleep. And then I woke up in the morning to see a whole bunch of responses to my tweet saying this didn't age well. And then I saw the balance changes. And,
Oh no.
and then everything just went to hell. So coming into this tournament, I knew I am not a professional player. That does not mean that I am not competitive. And there were certainly some women that I knew were better than me. But I felt like I had a good chance because of, one, the amount of time that I had spent commentating in the last few months. I'd been working near nonstop, and I had a ton of experience watching and commentating the meta. And two, I knew how to play every class with relative confidence. I knew how to play multiple decks for every class. I felt like I had the pick of the lot when I was crafting my lineup, and there were very few things that I didn't want to include in it. So going into the nerfs, I was not in as bad of a spot as some of the other players, not by any means. Like Hafu, for instance, does not play Constructed normally, had been working on a very specific lineup and playing only those specific decks for the last week. And then her lineup was something that she had just learned. The nerfs for her were hell because she only knew how to play one paladin deck, one priest deck, one mage deck, one warrior deck. Like, she was just not very flexible and competitive because she has not played much of it. For me, though, I ended up having to change quite a few of my decks, but I did not have to change any of my decks to something that I had no experience playing. So at the very least, I knew that after that, like before the nerfs, I felt pretty good about my chances. After the nerfs, I honestly felt even better about my chances.
Yeah, I mean, kind of piggybacking off of that, like, people may not know, but like, you are extremely good at Hearthstone. Whenever you want to be, you are like just top 200 on the ladder, easy, just grinding away. And I remember when you were on the podcast and you were streaming a good bit, we would randomly get queued up against each other in like top 200 legend with like Reno lock mirrors and stuff, and you would just crush me. But what was it like being kind of not really back, but just being a player as opposed to being behind the desk and being a host? Like, what did that feel like, being under the cameras and doing all this prep? Like, did it bring back old memories? Like, how was it?
Well, it was my first Hearthstone LAN that I've ever played in. So it sort of brought back that old feeling of competition, but it didn't really bring back old memories or anything like it before. And it is the most anxiety-inducing, stressful, incredible adrenaline rush that I've ever felt. And I used to compete in Yu-Gi-Oh! A little bit when I was in like junior high and high school, but not much. So I just had not felt that feeling in so long, and never, ever in anything that was that much pressure. So like, I was trying to keep my cool. A lot of the other women were freaking out, were really stressed out, were not happy after the balance changes. And I tried to go into the interviews like, I'm confident, I'm calm, I'm capable. I'm not going to let them know that I'm like terrified right now, because I want them to be concerned. I was playing the mind games from the second that I got there, and I don't know if it actually did anything, but I knew that I would feel better if I projected myself as feeling good about everything. And I think it did sort of help me to calm down. But it was so much fun. and so stupid stressful at the same time because there was just a lot on the line for me. Like, it was a $30,000 prize pool. I turned down casting the event to play in the event. They asked me to play first. And then a week later, I had Richard Lewis messaging me on Skype asking me personally if I would cast the event instead of playing. And I told him, I think that I can do this, and I would be cheating myself if I didn't give myself the opportunity. So, like, I needed to make top 4 to make more money than I would have from casting, guaranteed. And that's really stressful. Like, that's really scary.
Don't worry,
Well, I
just
mean-
make the finals. You'll be all right.
And after I think it was because it was 3 days, right?
Yes, it was. There was
So
a day 0, and then there were 2 days
Mhm.
of streamed competition.
Yeah, so after I believe the second day, you had tweeted out that you were really happy with your play from the previous 2 days, and after watching in the finals, watching your game where you're playing Big Spell Mage against OTK Paladin, and just seeing the line that you had in your head play out was just, I think, just really capped off just how well prepared you were for the event, and just how good of a player you really are. Despite how the rest of it went, I saw that game.
Very
and
graceful.
Do we have to talk about the rest of it?
This is the most backhanded
try to avoid
compliment
it.
I think Bodicus has ever given.
Despite how badly you tanked in game 4, game 3 was really good. No, you know what? Thank you, Bodicus.
I'm gonna move.
No, I actually... No, that's actually really important to talk about. And that's a lot of... Okay, so yes, I was very well prepared gameplay-wise. My play against Hafu was really good, even though she did essentially wrap up the match win in a bow and hand it over to me after game 1 and said, here you go, you can win this series now. And I said, thank you, Hafu, I will do that. I was really happy with how I played that series. I thought it went really well. My ban pick strategy across the board, I think, was very good. And that's actually something that we haven't talked about yet. The draft format for the tournament was absurd. And it was by far the hardest part of the entire event. And I do think that I approached it very well. And I think that I got the better of a couple of my opponents, Patra in particular. I think I ended up very favored after the ban pick against her. And I had some very good games in that series as well. So, like, all of my play, I was very happy with up until game 4 of the finals. And that is where something that I had not prepared for came into effect. And that was fatigue. It was fatigue. It was mental fatigue. It was physical. It was hunger because I hadn't eaten all day and I didn't have time to eat between semifinal 2 and the finals. It was the fact that it was freezing in that building. And I was like shuffling around hand warmers and like trying to get some of that nervous energy out, but also I was just really cold the entire time. It was like all of these other factors that as a commentator, you don't have to prepare for because you are kept comfortable. You are a professional, you're working, they are going to cater to your needs as best as possible. And as a player, they cater to your needs, but like, I mean, there's just some stuff that you can't prepare for, right? Like if you don't have time to eat, well, that's the schedule, you know, there's nothing you can do about that. You just have to deal with it. And it's something that I've had to take a lot of time to reflect on and to tell myself that it's okay that it happened. And for you guys who don't know or who may not have watched, game 4 of the finals, myself versus Gia, I'm up 2-1, and it's Big Spell Mage versus Odd Rogue. And I had that game won. And I would have won the tournament if I didn't just sort of blank out and make a suboptimal play in the final turn of the game. And it's something that I've struggled with quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. But at the end of the day, everybody makes mistakes. I'm still very happy with how I did. And it's something that I will just have to prepare for better next time. And I know that Edelweiss was saying a lot of the same things she experienced, like the mental and physical fatigue, the adrenaline and things that she hadn't prepared for that really affected her negatively, I think, in her series against Patra. So it's just these little things that, like, as a commentator, you never have to deal with. And as a player, it's a very different experience.
Yeah, fatigue and combating tilt at that point and just misplays in general are something I'm very familiar with. Both dream hacks where I finished right outside of top 16 were my fault. And I'm right there in the same boat with you. I've just basically thrown a really favorable match and then lost a series as a result.
Yeah.
And it, like in my case, it wasn't as nearly much pressure as you were under, but it, for me, it's gotten better, but I always kind of remember those instances and I use that as like fuel to improve. Like
Yeah.
in first DreamHack I went to, playing against Orange, and I remember the board. There was a 4-mana 5/4 beast that inspires, gives your hero +2 attack, and then an Azure Drake.
Oh, Savage Combatant.
Yeah, and I killed the Azure Drake because I was scared of swipe, and then like I died to a random spell that my 3-mana 3/4 give each player a random spell gave him, and I will always remember
Spellslinger.
that one. Yeah, and then I'll always remember against Strife Crow where I didn't pressure enough, and then he got 2 Vile Spine Slayers, one from Crystalline Oracle, one from the Spirit Echo in his deck, and I always remember those, and they never feel good, but it's just a matter of like taking that and realizing that it happens to literally everybody, and just using that as just kind of fuel to improve and just get better.
So you know when you go through like a bad breakup and you have that ache in your chest that when you're not thinking about it you're fine, but when you think about it you're just like shocked by the force that like you feel that with. It's like I'm mourning a loss. And it's so strange because I've never felt that for anything like this before. And it's not that I'm in any way upset to have lost to Gia. I think Gia's a fantastic player. I know Gia has a lot more competitive experience than I do, and losing to her is completely fine. She deserved to win. She played better than I did in the finals. It's like that loss of potential, I guess. Like I'm disappointed in the fact that I didn't give myself the best opportunity to succeed.
Yeah,
And
it's one of those things where it's because you're competitive in nature, it just feels so bad, and like you did not show your best, and like
exactly.
yeah,
Like second
so
place is I only ever wanted to make it out of groups. I told myself if I go to this tournament, I make top 8 and I'm money, I will be happy. And then like I did worlds better than that. I made second place. I won $6,000. Like my earnings before this tournament was $40 in BattleNet gift cards. And it just shot up on Liquipedia. And that's insane for me. But like at the end of the day, it's knowing that I cheated myself out of the opportunity to do better. And I did not represent myself as best I could. And that hurts. But it's something that I know that I can improve on. And it's something that I know that next time, even if I don't do as well in the tournament, I can play better and I can prepare myself better. And they've already invited me to the next WSOE Hearthstone event in March in Vegas. So I'm going to go and I'm going to prep and I'm going to be more prepared for this experience because I know what to expect this time.
So that's just going to guarantee a first place if you're going to be more prepared, right?
Yeah,
I don't think
that's
so.
how that works.
I don't know. I went into this event feeling good. Like I went into it feeling like, you know what? I have nothing to lose, at least as a player, and everything to gain. And I feel like I can do really well. And then I did. And I don't know what the next event is going to bring. Maybe I'll win. Maybe I won't get out of groups. I don't even know what the format is. But I love that feeling after you play your best. It's the best freaking coolest feeling because when you do like 1,000 IQ play and you know that people are watching you, it's so satisfying. And it's like when you go to Disneyland and you go back to Disneyland. It's like you have that feeling and then you leave and it's gone and you just want it back. So I'm not going to be a full-time competitive player by any means, but I'm going to find any opportunity that I can to have that feeling in my life because it's amazing.
Well, if I can make a recommendation, if you haven't already, go back and watch Game 3 again, because the commentators were doing their commentary way of criticizing the line that you took, and when it paid off in the way that you had envisioned it when you played the blizzard randomly, or not randomly, like you played the blizzard on purpose instead of trying to develop the Rin, and then you win the game a couple turns later with the fluke
Alana and the
Alana.
fluke. Yeah.
It was just it was so perfect, and I don't know, that's what I remember from the tournament. And
That game felt really good, and the faceless manipulator onto Patra's Naru Ravel as control warrior versus spiteful druid. That game felt so good.
So while this tournament was going on, Taylor and I were driving back from my parents' house, and I was the one driving. Taylor was watching the stream on her phone, and she was like, "What is happening? What's Cora doing?" I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "She faceless and Nerubian Unraveler." I'm like, "What? Excuse me?" And then couldn't play Ultimate Infestation. I like glanced over at the phone. I'm like, "Okay, this is awesome. This is so sweet." I almost wanted to pull over to watch it and finish it.
I literally remember the moment she played the Nerubian, and then 10 mana rolled around. She didn't play UI. I'm like, I literally wrote down on my notepad, I'm like, she doesn't have UI. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I put a question mark next to it. And I'm like, maybe she does have it. And maybe she just screwed herself out of it. And I want to make sure she can't do it if she has it. And then I went back and I listened to the commentary for that one, and hearing Brian Kibler be like, I want her to play that faceless. I want her to lock out that Nerubian Unraveling. And Dan's like, nah, there's no way. And I did it. And I'm like, that's so freaking cool. And that's what really good commentary will do for you. It'll build up the hype, and it'll look at all of the possible permutations of a turn. And then when the player absolutely nails it, it makes them look like a freaking genius. So I really do think that the commentary made me look very good. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm very grateful that they were able to communicate what I was trying to do.
So now I'm pumped for Hearthstone player Cora. But before we dive too deep down that rabbit hole, we're all like, yeah, Hearthstone. This tournament, this format. Can this format work in future tournaments? Because it seemed great for complex player viewing situations and really, really intense for the competitors.
Yeah. So I think it's something that, first off, let me say the format was incredibly fun to play. But it was just really difficult. It's very skill intensive. It's very tiring because it does take about 20 to 30 minutes for each draft format. So that extends a series time by 20 to 30 minutes. And it's already a best of 5 last hero standing series that could take about an hour. So you're extending rounds. I don't think it could ever be used in a Swiss tournament because it would take too much time. I do think that it's a format that I would love to see used again. And I would love for them to have some form of a graphic somehow to display for the commentators how the draft process is being executed so the commentators can talk about it. Because it's a part of the tournament that was so integral to the overall tournament result and is so integral to the best players performing their best. But the commentators just didn't get a chance to really talk about it while it was happening. Because there's so much mind games, there's so much back and forth that's happening at that time. And I would have loved for the audience to be able to know about that, to know about like all the super sweet reads that you make about your opponent and like all the research that we're doing on what decks they love to play and on what decks that they beat their previous opponents with. So you know that you want them to bring it. Like, for instance, I knew that Patra's lineup was incredibly mid-rangey and that I know she loves to play Warlock. So I was banning Hunter first every time. It was ban 2, then pick 1. Ban 2 of your opponent's classes again, pick 1 more, and then ban 1, and then you pick your third deck. So I banned her Hunter right away, and I banned her Warlock. Because even though I wasn't really afraid of Warlock, I knew she wanted to play it, and I wanted her to be uncomfortable. And then the rest of her lineup was super mid-rangey, so I grabbed Warrior, and then I banned her Mage, and I banned her Warrior. So we couldn't play a Warrior mirror, she couldn't Big Mage by Warrior, and then every deck that she had was weak to Warrior. So, like, as soon as I did those things and made that read that she wanted to play Warlock, I was in there. And it would have been awesome for the audience to witness that happening because it's the coolest part of the tournament by far.
I could totally imagine, how they have the League of Legends pick screen at the start of every League of Legends game. They could do that for the picks and bans of this, and it would be super awesome because you could get that extra level of it, like the casters analysis of what they think they're going to ban, what they're going to pick, what their strategy is going into the lineup. I think that would be super cool, but obviously super time consuming and would probably lend it a lot more towards an invite only tournament type deal.
Yeah, I think so. It would require a specific UI, like a specific built-in for a bracket client, and it would require quite strict timing of each pick and ban phase. Because for us, we were just like communicating to an admin what decks we were banning, and they were going back and forth trying to communicate to us, what your opponent banned, what your opponent picked, and it was quite confusing to keep track of at times. I think it's something that they could build out a feature, maybe on like Smash GG or Battlefy to be able to accomplish, but it would need to be a very in-demand format for that to happen.
I hope they use it for something like Seat Story. I think would be a really great environment for this sort of thing. But yeah, you couldn't do it at playoffs because just the sheer volume of time would be pretty insane.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun to watch, and they threw together a graphic in the finals that they were able to dig into after the after all the picks and bans were done. But I agree that a live interactivity would really add some value there. Okay, so we're not wrapping up this interview, but we're getting to the last important part after the other
I'm
two
quite
important.
long-winded. I'm sorry.
Well, no, this is really, really useful and insightful. Again, this Cora doesn't get to broadcast, and I think there's real value added for us as hosts and for our listeners about what life is really like in this environment, both as a caster and a player. So your candor so far is much appreciated. And there's one last topic we need to be candid about. You've alluded to it a couple times.
Of course.
WSOE was an all-women's tournament, and that brings light to a particular area of the Hearthstone and gaming community that deserves some discussion, as always, and this is it. We're not going to get a better environment to discuss it or a better person who understands the impact being a public figure who is a woman in a gaming community can be. So we'll start with just WSOE. The importance of this tournament being all women, how much value do you think that added? How much scrutiny do you think was added to the event, especially with the timing and the production quality? All these things kind of play into a perfect storm of a really unique event, and I'm wondering what the impact was there.
I think the impact was largely very positive, but I do think that was only the case for several reasons. One, the fact that the tournament was incredibly well produced, very high budget, top-notch commentators, top-notch production is so important to make this event valid in the Hearthstone community's eyes. And they had never seen anything like this before. There's never been an all-women's this big of a prize pool with this much on the line, this high of stakes. So the fact that it looked like the company cared so much about it and wanted it to be such a success and put so much time and effort and money into making it a success was very important, because on their end, they did everything right. They treated us incredibly well. They set us up for success. And now it was the players' job to reflect that back on them and to make ourselves look like competitive Hearthstone players. And I think largely we did. And that is just because they invited very talented competitive Hearthstone players. There were very few mistakes across the board. There was almost no really large glaring mistakes made by any of the players. There was no lack of understanding in matchups. I don't think there was anything that anybody could do that you could point to and say, this is just like a horrendous, horrible amateur play. It just didn't happen because they invited very good players. So right there, we were already setting this event up for success from the community's eyes, and the production was great and the players were very good. And then we had the ability to react to the nerfs so quickly. So the nerfs happened. Obviously, it was unfortunate for a lot of the players. It was a really difficult time for some of them. But the production responded perfectly by extending our submission deadlines, so that was perfect by them. And we were the first players who had the chance to play with this new patch. So, if we play well again, suddenly we're not just playing well on a stale patch. We're playing well on something that nobody else has experience with, and suddenly we're the foremost experts on this new meta, that people are going to come and look to this tournament as an example of how to play these new decks and how to play this new meta. So it was honestly, well, it was really unfortunate timing for the players. It was phenomenal timing for us to be seen by the community as experts and for people to just want to watch the event in general. I don't think the viewership would have been anywhere near as high if the nerfs had not happened when they did. So it was sort of this perfect storm that came together and created a really incredibly successful event that helped the Hearthstone community to see competitive women in this like beautiful light for the first time. And I hope to God that we get more events like this, even if they're co-ed, just events that include women and allow them to just do what we do best. Because some of us are really damn good at Hearthstone. And this was like the perfect example of how to make a women's event great.
And it kind of adds credence to what you talked about earlier, that the two finalists were also the two most frequent casters, that in order to be a good caster, you have to be good at Hearthstone and know what's up, and then the two of you meet in the finals. You know, Gia, of course, having her own extensive resume of being really, really good. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, do you think there was any difference in community interaction or treatment of the event during and afterwards because it was all women, either positive or negative?
I certainly think there were some positives. A lot of the community, I'm sure, have not seen many of the women that were competing in a competitive situation. A lot of us are streamers, commentators, and don't get the chance to compete very often. So for a lot of the community, I'm sure it was a very positive experience. And for all of the players, it was a very positive experience. But with anything that is intentionally segregated by gender or intentionally invite only for a single gender, you're going to get people who overreact in certain ways. And it always kind of surprises me because none of the women are upset. None of the male Hearthstone players are upset. It's random people on the internet who want to be offended and want to be offended for us, except we're not offended. We're not upset by it at all. So I don't understand why they are. And it's people who shout, you know, segregation, sexism, it's all bad, blah, blah, blah. Why should women have to have their own tournament? Women's events are just always going to be a very divisive issue. And I'll say it again because I've said it 1,000 times. We don't want there to have to be women's only Hearthstone events. But until women feel more comfortable and more capable in a regular competitive setting where every gender is included, these events are just going to happen sometimes to continue encouraging women to compete. And it is what it is. Us women are not mad about them. If we were, we wouldn't play in them. But we love the game, and we love getting a chance to compete against each other. So we're more than happy. And I think that's all there is to say about it.
Yeah, it's amazing how the external perspective and the internal perspective of the people who are actually involved has some variance there. Thanks, internet. But as you've also been, you alluded to this a lot as caster and public figure, as a kind of a face of Hearthstone. But like you said, there were a lot of people on Reddit that really wanted a minute or an hour or a day of your time. How has the treatment kind of been there as you've acclimated into being a face for the game? And I think you touched on some of the positive aspects as well about how much of a role model you've become for a lot of young women that want to get into esports. What's that been like entering into this kind of male-dominated universe?
It's very scary because I'm very young myself, and I did not really have a woman to look up to when I started Hearthstone commentary. Closest I had was Rachel Seltzer, because she'd been hosting Hearthstone events, but she wasn't a commentator. You know, I was the first real female Hearthstone commentator, and it's difficult to just know what path you're supposed to follow when you don't have anybody's footsteps to walk in. You know, you have to sort of forge that path for yourself. So it's been difficult to get to this point, but also I don't know that I'm doing everything correct. I think a lot of the time I'm not. And I think that there are certainly things that people shouldn't want to follow in my footsteps in doing. I think I've been very combative at times. I've been offensive, really critical. I can be kind of mean sometimes, and I don't want people to emulate that. But also, I think a lot of it is just my own self doubt and insecurity, and not thinking that I should be a role model for people because I'm just so confused sometimes. But I mean,
Well,
that's being human, and that's like
I think that's part of what
just
makes
forging a career.
I think that's part of what makes a good role model is being like a just a relatable person, and that's like what comes with that is like all the great stuff and all the flaws that people have too. So it's just being yourself, I think, is the most important thing, and not like being manufactured or anything. So I think
Mhm.
just being you, like, and taking whatever comes with that is the best thing you can do.
And I'm trying to. It's something that like is certainly getting easier, but is still very surreal. You know, I never expected to be in a position of leadership or to be in a position where people would be looking up to me and wanting to emulate what I'm doing. And it's very flattering. Um, it's very flattering. It's very vindicating for all the work that I'm doing, and I love every second of it. But yeah, I don't want to make it seem like it's easy because it's really not. It is very scary to have that much pressure and that much weight on your shoulders at times. But also, like, I get these tweets occasionally where it's like, my daughter was watching this tournament with me and she saw you up on that stage commentating. And she said, Daddy, can I do that someday? Or, you know, they see me playing and they see me playing well. And they get so excited because they know that their daughters or their sisters or their loved ones can do that. And it's like, oh my God, how has nobody else done this? Because so many men have done it. So many men have been top tier commentators, incredible competitive players. And for women it's just so much harder. But like, I guess my entire life I've been doing that. I've been playing games my whole life. I've been competing with men in male dominated activities my whole life and beating them. And like, I've been setting myself up for this without even knowing that I was setting myself up for this. And I do think that I have a very strong personality and I am a very outwardly confident person. So I guess like I just sort of fit the bill as being able to do this. And it's something that I've had to sort of embrace. And I continue to embrace it every day because the best role model that I can be for the people who are looking up to me. And I, you know, I'm fumbling sometimes, but I'm getting there. And I guess we'll see where I am in 3 more years because I've sure as hell grown quite a bit in the last 3 years.
Man, that must be so, like, otherworldly surreal to get those kind of messages of, like, meaning that much to people just by doing this job that you didn't think was a job.
Well, it wasn't a job for me. That's the thing. Like it was not a job for me in last year. After I graduated college, it sort of became a job. It was always just like, oh, you know, I'll do this for as long as I can in any capacity that I can. And then, you know, anything that I do will be great on a resume for when I get a real job someday. And like, I still don't have a real job. Like, I have a better than real job. And it's awesome. And like I said, I'm not taking it for granted any day, but it certainly is something that you do need to get used to certain aspects of it that you didn't expect were parts of the job. You know, I'm a Hearthstone commentator, but I'm also, you know, somebody who guests on podcasts and who gets emails about answering interview questions for people's thesis papers for their doctorates, and like who is asked all the time about advice and what they've done in their own life and how other people can grow. And like, you're kind of a therapist and you're kind of an educator and you're kind of a broadcaster. And it's like all these crazy things mixed into one that I never expected I would have to deal with. But it's so freaking cool.
I just have this vision of this person is at this, like, they're at a reception 10 years down the road from now, and you meet them like, oh, Cora, hey, so I asked you questions, and then you told me to go face more, and I'm a doctor now. So, so thanks for that.
Oh my gosh.
I just have
Oh
that
my gosh.
vision.
Which reminds me, I need to email somebody back answering a bunch of questions that I have not gotten back to them about.
Tell them to go face more.
Oh gosh.
Well, this interview has been enlightening, and selfishly, I want it to go on, but we do also have a podcast that we do on weeks where you're not here. So, would you like to join us for the remaining however many hours this show is?
Golly, I would love to, Hat.
Well, thank you.
Let's get back into it.
Golly
Like-
has been called.
Yes.
It's like riding a bike. Let's go.
Yes. Well,
Everyone, get in here!
it's time to hear about the ladder experience. And Bodicus, you have written down here always look for lethal, so you get to go first, buddy.
Okay, so this week I've been playing. I finished like rank 2-ish. I didn't really want to end up pushing for legend, but New Year started. Been playing a few decks. Been playing a bit of Cloning Gallery Priest. Playing a lot of Quest Rogue lately, and it's been going well. If I played better, I just made a couple pretty boneheaded mistakes today, but I think that deck's actually pretty well positioned right now. I like where it's at. But the other deck I've been playing, instead of getting into my mistakes, let's get into my opponent's mistakes. I was playing a Odd Warrior against, I think it was like Secret Hunter. I mean, it was Deathstalker Rexar Hunter, really, because that's the card they play, and that's the only card that really matters in that matchup. And we're playing out this long game, and the game's going on forever, obviously. And I'm doing what I need to do by making sure they don't have any other stuff and removing it as efficiently as possible. And we get to the very end of the game, and they play out the Halazi beast that puts a bunch of 1/1s in their hand, and it has life steal. And I need to prevent it from life stealing because I'm going to kill them the next turn, or they're going to die to fatigue or something because they're fatiguing for quite a bit. So I just need to prevent them from gaining life. So I use up all my armor, clear the board, and I'm at 6 life. And they play one of the 1/1 lynxes. Oh, I think I also had I had a big taunt in the way, because that's how I got them within lethal ranges. I think I had one of the 6/9 dire horns in play, and I'm just like, okay, I hope I'm not dead. So I have no cards in my deck. I'm at 6. I have a taunt in play, and they're tanking forever, and their rope starts to burn, and I think they play another lynx or something, and their rope burns, and then I see something point at my taunt minion, and I'm like, well, if that was a kill command, I'm just dead. So I don't know what they're pointing at my taunt minion, but hopefully it's not a kill command. And you know how when the spell goes over and you don't know where it's aimed, like the spell just pops up and you don't know where it's aimed?
Oh, you got a
I
floating
just-
card?
the arrow. Yeah, well, no, you see the arrow point where they're going to cast the spell, and then the spell gets played, but you're not really sure because sometimes the target changes. They like drag it over the minion, and then it goes, and then it ends up going to your face. Well, the kill command went towards my minion, and then I saw the spell up, and I almost started getting upset because I figured they actually figured it out, and it was going to my face because it was like at the end of the rope, and then it hit the minion, and then I won the game, and I was so happy. Oh man! So
I like how you
moral-
said I was getting upset because I thought they figured it out.
Yeah, I don't know how you made that mistake, but yeah. So moral of the story: always look for lethal. I'm at 6, but guaranteed to take fatigue. Have no cards in my deck, so should probably just send that kill command face, pass the turn, and win. That would have been a better play.
ABC. Always be counting.
Yep.
Yeah. Appa, what have you been playing?
I have been playing pretty much exclusively Wild since the season started a day ago. And that's because of the Wild tournament that is, or the Wild qualifiers that's going on this month. And for those of you who don't know, the top 100 ladder finishers from Wild get invited to a tournament that seeds into the big Wild top 8 production that they did last year as well. And I really enjoy Wild as a format. I think it's actually surprisingly underdeveloped in terms of deck building. And for those of you who have not heard me on the show before, I love building shaman decks, and I'm having a bit of success tinkering around with shaman stuff in Wild, so I've been playing a lot of that. And I haven't been playing too much off stream. The past couple days have been pretty busy for me, just with real life stuff, like getting scheduled for classes and doing a bunch of other stuff. But I'm having a lot of fun in Wild, and I'm planning on streaming a lot this month. I'm actually going to stream for a good bit after the show ends, so that should tell you how much of a grind I'm looking to make this month in terms of streaming. And most of that will probably be Wild Ladder, so I'm having a lot of fun there.
Fantastic. I see that you are fully embracing our Wild Overlords. Are there totem golems in your decks?
Yes, there are golden totem golems in there.
Oh, you kept them. Good.
I couldn't get rid of my boys.
Yeah. They're large gentlemen. Cora, what have you been playing?
So I finished the season, I don't know, I was top 1000, somewhere in there. But I was top 500 for a while with Rush Warrior. I actually peaked around like 150-ish with Cube Warlock before WSOE. But I was mostly just trying to practice various decks for the tournament there. So I was playing a lot of Cube Block, and that was working very well. And now, like, Board Control's been playing Cube Block for the last couple of days. I saw Zalay playing Cube Block. So apparently people have caught on that Cube Block legend in season and see if I grind for top 100. I don't know if they're going to ask me to cast the Wild event or not, because I did cast the last one. So there is always a chance that, like, grinding and finishing is pointless, but I'm going to do it anyway. If I have to cast the event, then I'm going to want to know how to play the format. So I'm going to have fun doing that. And I've been playing a little bit of Death Star's Hunter in Standard yesterday and today, just because he made it look so fun at the Specialist Showdown that I wanted to give it a try. And it is a really fun deck.
I saw you crush Zalay on his stream with Kelliseth on 2 and Rush Warrior. That was so satisfying to watch that.
A lot of people were like, why weren't you streaming while I was streaming. I was casting the event and playing the game at the same time. The day had just started for the Specialist Showdown, and I was like, I'll queue up one more game. And it was freaking Zalay. And I'm like, oh, jeez. That was really funny, though. I did just completely not draw him. It was sick.
Yeah, it was so funny because he saw no tank up, and he's like, she's gonna Kelliseth me on 2 or something, and then Kelliseth.
I sure did. I grommed him on 10, and he's really dead.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy, what year is it?
Oh my gosh, the best year.
Yeah.
The year where Warrior is viable in multiple forms and so much fun.
Yo, Sulthraze after rotation, that card is legit. The sword, the overkill sword, we're going to see a lot of that. That card's so good.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Excited for April.
Oh man. April's going to be hard to predict, but super fun. As for me, I have been playing a lot of Priest. I have learned the key strategy to always beat Hunter, and that is put a Howl Fiend inside of their Wandering Monster, and then when you Mass Hysteria it and it clears their To My Side, it discards their Rexar. Would strongly recommend, please engage in this strategy if you wish to beat Hunter.
I feel like you've been a part of this scenario before, but on the receiving end.
The first day that Wandering Monster came out, after the podcast, Bodicus was specking me in this very OBS, in this very chair, and I got Halfiend defiled. And I made it into Trollden because my life was so sad that the world had to see it. And yeah, that was something. And Bodicus' raucous laughter over me saying not like this over and over again was my 15 seconds of fame for a second, but the circle has completed. After the last expansion, I Howlfiended another hunter. I got rid of his Rexar. Felt very pleasant. Would strongly recommend. And yeah, that was with Zerek's Cloning Gallery Priest, which you will hear about later in this episode. But that's enough for me.
That was very fun. That was back when you were a rogue main. It was good times.
That's back whenever you were a Hearthstone streamer. Whenever you did that thing.
I feel personally attacked right now.
Well,
I miss the late night hat streams.
You've been talking a lot about Priest lately.
I have been playing a lot of Priest lately. I also miss it, but I get up at 7 a.m. every day now. So
don't worry, we'll have late night Oppa streams from now on. It's okay.
I won't be awake because I have to go to bed after this because I have to be awake at 7 a.m. Yeah, Cora's tired just thinking about it. I don't blame you.
Asleep already. Ugh.
Yeah,
I've been trying to not go to sleep out on day, but I'm such a weenie.
You mean adult, like person?
Oh, I'm an adult.
Which means weenie.
Dang it.
Yes. Yep. Grown up now. Anyways, it's news time.
So, pretty light on the news this week, but there were a couple things I thought was worth bringing up, especially this the series that the Play Hearthstone website has been putting on. It's they have a Watch Well Played, which is kind of a video they put out. It's maybe a couple times a week, at least once a week, where they have different topics that they want to talk about. And I really liked this one specifically. It's How Pros Fight Tilt. And I feel like this series kind of just, takes from our podcast sometimes. We just had the Jared Tendler episode talking about Tilt, and so now they're talking about it too. But there's a lot of really good information in here, just kind of things we've been preaching on the show about how to remain calm and realize that everybody has to deal with Tilt on some level, and everybody's trying to, win a game of Hearthstone and so on and so on. So there's a link in the show notes if you want to check out the video. There's a whole ton of videos that they have just about getting better at Hearthstone, which I think is pretty cool. Makes the main Hearthstone page a lot more lively with articles. I don't know, did anybody else get a chance to check out this video? All right, I will just go on to the next announcement, which is...
not gonna lie, I played Smash yesterday.
Can't fault you for that.
Yeah.
That game is so
Smash
good.
Is a lot of fun. Yeah.
Ganondorf hype.
So the next news item is our friend of the show, Bemmie, announced a new CCG-focused esports organization called ATKmode. And they've announced 2 of the players that will be part of the Hearthstone team. One of our great listeners and patrons of the show, Smiley Chris, was the first player announced, which is really exciting. And also, I'm not familiar with this name, Faluar?
Falular, I believe, is an Israeli streamer and pro. You might be muted, Cora.
Oh, sorry, Falular. Yeah.
Yes.
He's a Hearthstone player. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So this is pretty exciting. I'm excited to see kind of where this goes. Bemmie has always done a bunch of great work, and I'm sure he's putting infinite amount of work into this organization and getting it off the ground. So we'll have to kind of see where it goes from here. And the last kind of news item I saw on here was that one of the Hearthstone Tavern Brawl developers, he goes by at Joemag on Twitter, took a walk down the Tavern Brawl memory lane from Tavern Brawls that he's worked on, and just it's a really good thread where he kind of goes over each one of the uh, Tavern Brawls that he's been a part of, and just kind of recaps them and says things he's learned or how that Tavern Brawl came about, and just it was a really cool thread to read through. So I know we don't talk about Tavern Brawl a whole ton on here, but there's been a lot of really good ones this year. I actually met him at the charity event that our other friend of the show,
Bites.
Bites, was put on, and it was really awesome to get to talk to him about all of these tavern, or a bunch of these Tavern Brawls that he put together, because a lot of them have just been really good this year. So
Yeah, Joemag's a great guy. He does really good work.
and he's really passionate about Tavern Brawl. You can tell that he's very critical about making sure that they put out a good product every week, in terms of the
Mhm.
Tavern Brawl. And if you
Yeah,
play the
that's
Tavern,
that's one of the things you don't really think of that much because I mean it just happens every week, but regardless of skill level, it's like one of the things I'm sure almost everybody plays every week. So it's really important to have in the game and have it be like polished and everything.
yeah, even when I was, playing the game, so like trying to be super competitive, I always made sure I got my Tavern Brawl in every week, because it was fun to just kind of have a break and do something different in the game. And I think he's done a really good job at capturing the attention every week and having something very unique. And if you play the Tavern Brawl this week, you will get a Rosticon's Rumble pack. So
What? I didn't know that actually.
yeah, make sure you check out the Brawl this week and get some of those cool new Rosticon's Rumble cards. Even though not a ton of them are seeing a lot of play right now, but I imagine come April we're gonna see that change a lot, because I think there's a lot of cards in the set that are uh quite good when we get rid of some of the cards from the Year of the Mammoth.
Banana buffoon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cora knows about the Mukla memes that have been
That's-
going on this
Wait,
show.
we don't have the time to explain. No time to explain.
Okay.
Wait, I meant to play this one.
It's the
The hell goes on when I'm not here?
It's been a crazy 2 years, Cora. And
Oh man.
I do want to point out that Zerek put Mukla in his hunter deck and said, I learned from HS Purple, put Mukla in every deck. And, I knew I liked those guys. Anyways, tournament recap. So, as we stated last week, we are going to be actively not covering the HS All-Stars tournament because of the players who were disqualified from the HGG being invited and playing in the tournament. So, we a lot of respect for the people that put the work into producing the event, but it's not something that we support as a show because the players represent the side of Hearthstone that would rather not see continue in the competitive environment. But we do want to talk about the Esports Arena Streamer Showdown, which was super rad. And as we discussed last week, this is a one deck format with a 10-card sideboard, 3 groups of 4 players competing in best of 3 with top 4 seeded into the final bracket. In the top 4, the players can resubmit their deck and sideboard. This is one deck with a 10-card sideboard. And we had some specialists hand-picked for this event. Fibonacci, of course with Dead Man's Hand Warrior, sideboarding into Mechathune Warrior. Zetalot with Quest Priest, of course, sideboarding into Mechathune Priest. You'll hear a lot of that. Gyong with Quest Rogue. I'm disappointed, Gyong. You were supposed to bring Gadgetzan Auctioneer. You were the chosen one. Orange with Malygos Druid with a Togwaggle Azalina sideboard. He did not care that his Wild Crows cost 3. He brought them anyway. Strife Crow with Even Paladin with an OTK sideboard. Death Star with Midrange Hunter with a sideboard that had more Midrange Hunter beasts in it. Zerek had Control Warlock with a Weirdo Leroy combo sideboard. Ike had an Even Shaman that sided into different Even Shaman threats, and there was a Baku in the sideboard. There were no other odd cost cards.
Freaking Ike.
It was just, yes, exactly. He made the finals, by the way. APX Void with Big Spell Mage that sided into the Antonitis Molten Reflection combo. RDU, he played Zoo during the Swiss. I think was the only player to completely change his deck into Cube Warlock in the top 4 with a sideboard that included Soul Warden, the 6-mana 6/6 that gets you back discarded cards in case you got to get those Tempo Doom Guards because he's a Zoo player at heart. Can't resist the urge. Reynad with even Warlock with a Mechathune sideboard. I am disappointed that he did not bring Shieldbearer Zoo, but it is what it is. And then Dog with APM Priest because he's Dog. What's he going to do? So definitely a little bit of different tournament. Death Star took the finals over Ike. RDU took third over Strife Crow in the 4th. Now obviously the meta here is a little bit different. We don't want to cover the HS All-Star Tournament, but we want you to know what you should bring, so we're going to go over what players brought, just so you have an idea of the representation, but you should expect these decks to change. This is Week 1, and just so you know, in the Week 1 format, just so you have an idea of where we're starting from post-nerf, Rogue, Odd Rogue is super duper popular. There were 12 Odd Rogues out of 14 Rogues, 2 Quest Rogues, 13 Paladins, 8 were even, 5 were OTK, 13 Hunters, a variety of Hunters here, 4 Spell, 4 Death Rattle, 4 Midrange, and a Secret. You'll see a lot of that. Though keep an eye out for Wirer's mid-range hybrid hunter list. That's the one that Asmodai got rank 1 legend with, and you should definitely expect to see a lot of that deck going forward. There's a huge drop-off after Rogue, Paladin, and Hunter. 6 Warlocks, 4 even, 2 Cube. 6 Priest, 3 Zerek, 2 Control, and Inner Fire. 5 Shaman, all even. 4 Mage, 2 Big Spell, 2 Tempo. 2 Odd Warriors, and a Togwaggle Druid. The winning lineup was a Death Rattle Hunter, even Paladin, Odd Rogue, even Warlock. Second place was Spell Hunter, even Paladin, Odd Rogue, even Warlock. And this is the lineup you should expect to see. At least until players get their bearings and meta kind of starts to shake out. And playoffs are coming. They're pretty soon. Before we get to playoffs, though, there was a game that seemed to be over, but it was just getting started that we want to talk about. This was from the Streamer Showcase. Death Star versus RDU, game number 4. And our own Cora Georgiou was casting this game along with Dr. Chikininki. So we'll set the stage for you. Death Star is playing Master's Call Hunter, and he's very good at it, while RDU, this is in the top 4, he's playing Cube Warlock, and his build was super anti-minion. So, Master's Call Hunter, really minion heavy. RDU's deck, really not minion heavy. Really minion removal heavy. And it was really fascinating to watch it play out. It was super strong for RDU to open. There was Kobold Librarian with 2 Spellstones in hand into a Doomsayer. The hand was Spellstone, Ziliac, Shroom Defile, and Skull of Minari. And that's not a hand that you want to see or deal with when you're a minion-based Hunter deck. Because Death Star gets a Misha, fine, whatever, Spellstone. It gets a Hyena, fine, whatever, Ziliacs it. And Death Star knows before the rest of us know that the Rexar he top decks on turn 5 is going to be the card that has to keep him in the game. And that Skull doesn't come out because Possess Lackey off the top. Immediately gets silenced. Second Possess Lackey off the top. And RDU has the interesting decision of not Dark Pacting it on turn 7 because he's at 30. 30 life. So he chose not to Dark Pact for 0 and get a Void Lord or Doomguard because why bother? So Death Star's like, okay, well I have a Crackling Razormaw in face. Razormaw, +3 attack, Dire Frenzy, you take 9. And then next turn RDU's like, Spellstone Shroom I'm at 30. And I have a Doomguard. Because I traded my Recruiter. Or my Possessed Lackey. Your turn. So, and then Skull comes down, and then second Doomguard is in hand. Doesn't look great for Death Star. And this is where our friend Cora here makes a pronunciation on this game. That maybe it's time to wrap up. But then one, Dr. J, proves...
Calm down, I'm a doctor.
He's a doctor. And he says, don't count your beasts before they're built. And that really is... he can see the future. Kind of crazy. Because incoming, Rexar clears off the Doomguard. Now, RDU has Gul'dan in hand. Does he bring back just the 2 Doomguards? No, he lets the Void Lord go and play, but he actually just brings back the 2 Doomguards next turn, trades one of them into a stubborn gastropoded Zombeast, but then the next one dies to kill command, and if you've done the math, 2 Doomguards before Gul'dan, 2 Doomguards after Gul'dan, there are no more Doomguards. So this is going to be a value game. You know what card's really good in the value game? Good old Deathstalker Rexar. I still don't have a Greetings Traveler bumper. I messed up, guys. I messed up. So, the grind begins. Siphon Life versus Build-A-Beast. Build-A-Beast, make a taunt, kill a Void Lord. Siphon Life, Stonehill, Booty Bay Bodyguard, kill your board. Make a Stealth 6/6 Beast. Oh, I'm a Warlock. Corpse Taker, Siphon Life, do some damage. Kill command, get 6 Hounds from Unleash the Hounds. Play a Timberwolf, obviously. Clear your board, obviously. What is happening? So the Hunter is at 19. The Warlock's at 35, and the game is slipping away for RDU as the Warlock. The Build-A-Beast keep going. Poisonous Rushing Cave Hydra in hand, regular Charging Cave Hydra in hand, and RDU is siding out his threats. He sided out his threats. He doesn't have the Mountain Giant still in, doesn't have the Umbra, doesn't have the Tal'Daram, and he spent his Doom cards already. So then, while Death Star's life total starts to tick down, there's a rushing 6/8 Ravasaur runt with lifesteal. There's no way RDU's catching up to that. And then the second Void Lord just gets wiped off the face of the earth with that poisonous Hydra. The Warlock clears the board completely with Hellfire Defile. As soon as that second 6/8 lifesteal Ravasaur runt comes down, well played, and the Warlock concedes the turn, he goes into Fatigue. Because if you really want to fatigue someone in 2019, you play Hunter. Obviously. Cora, what was it like watching this game? What were the feelings that you had?
From a die-hard Q-Block player, overwhelming sadness. It was so disappointing. Mostly because I know when you get to that point in the game, basically, normal Hunter versus Q-Block, if the Q-Block gets Skull up and has a Void Lord on the board and isn't immediately dead, usually they win the game. But it's also usually a Cube Warlock that's playing 2 Mountain Giants, a Spirit Singer Umbra, a Prince Tal'Daram. RDU didn't have any of those cards in his deck. So on paper, Blood Reaver Gul'dan that's resurrecting demons should beat Deathstalker Rexar, but RDU just did not have the follow-up in his deck to be able to do that. He didn't have the Tal'Daram to Tal'Daram a Cube. He didn't have the Umbra to combo with Cube to get additional Doom Guards. And he just didn't have enough demon value to beat a powerful beast every turn. Granted, Death Star had some very, very good beasts that he built. You're not going to always get such good beasts. But it's the fact that RDU had to side out so many threats to be able to survive to that point that ultimately he sort of gave away his own win condition. It was a really weird series, and I did not expect Death Star to be able to win that game, but he did, and he ended up winning the whole tournament.
And it was really something to watch because my usual go-to strategy for finding a game to watch is just like pick a game and then skip about halfway into it and see what happens, and then skip a little bit further and see if it's still going. So I skipped to the point where RDU had stuck a skull and was about to drop a Void Lord after 2 Doom Guards. So like, oh, this game must be over. And I fast forward and it was still going. It's like, what? What's happening? So it was something. Expect to see a lot of Deathstalker Rexar and or a lot of banned Hunter decks at playoffs, which are coming in pretty soon. January 12th and 13th. So about a week and a half from the time of this recording in Europe. January 19th and 20th for the Americas, and Asia Pacific, January 25th and 27th. Cora, are there any tournaments this weekend or when are you working next?
The next event that I'm guaranteed working isn't until February. So as far as I know, not a whole lot going on, other than playoffs for these next couple of weeks. I'm not going to be casting playoffs, but you will be hearing my voice there. So a little piece of me will be at the playoffs, but I will be sitting at home very happy.
Voiceover hype.
Woo! I love doing VO. It's so much fun.
Are you going to be a Hearthstone card anytime soon? Yeah.
Holy crap. That's the dream, right? I mean, honestly, like if they ever asked me to be an Overwatch character, I would just drop everything and basically ask them. It'd be like if they're asking me to jump and I say how high. Because I would not want anything more than that.
They need to take the character from the video of the inn that closely resembles you and make that a card.
Yeah.
And then get you to do the voice line.
I want them to ask me to cosplay her for something. But she didn't even have any lines. She just stood there. She just stood there. That was so funny, though.
And I bet you already do a mean Brigitte impression.
Well, I have to put on the Swedish accent. I do kind of look like her a little bit, too.
Yes, you just need the giant robot armor.
Yeah, she's like, my name is Brigitte Lindholm.
It's pretty good.
It's not great.
You're on the spot. It's fine. Our explanation is not how to do Overwatch accents, luckily. So, instead, we're going to talk about everyone's favorite class.
Before we leave this section, I just want to say I heard one quote that I thought was very funny about the showdown. I believe it was on Zerek stream. He said, "Oh, it's really good that ATKmode got second place. It's good to see that there were 3 good classes in Shaman in the top 4 of the."
Rude.
That's rough.
I
So
think
rough.
I think he said something along the lines of, "Oh, Paladin and Warlock all make sense,
And
and then Shaman's also in there too." That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
because
funny.
Ike has historically overperformed the Shaman, and him and the what was Ike's team in that team? The Wieners?
Yeah, Team Wiener.
Yeah.
Team Wiener has historically also enjoyed a weirdo mid-rangey Shaman decks.
And he's very good at it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
bizarrely
Very
so.
good.
Yeah.
Well, is it time for explanations? I think it is.
So last week we talked a lot about Hunter, and one of the common threads in how to beat Hunters was playing Zerek's Cloning Gallery Priest. And admittedly, I've probably played it the least out of anybody here, so I'm just going to ask the questions and listen to y'all's wisdom. So, what is the core strategy of Cloning Gallery Priest? What is the deck?
So I don't know how much Cora has played the deck, but I would venture to guess that I've played the most of this deck.
I've played it quite a bit. I hit Legend with it a couple months ago, and I brought it to WSOE.
Yeah, so you're probably you probably have a little bit more experience than I do, but played the deck a lot. It's very, very powerful and a lot of fun, which is a big reason I like playing it. But kind of the core strategy is it has a very limited number of minions in the deck, and you over the course of the game you can kind of get them out with Shadow Essence or just play them out, and then eventually later in the game you end up resurrecting them and either use them to kill your opponent with Mind Blasts, or a lot of the times just the Spellstone making 4 large minions is good enough to tie up a lot of games. So the deck plays out quite differently matchup to matchup, but it has a lot of play to it, and like I said, it's just a lot of fun. But mainly, what you're doing is trying to resurrect large minions and either kill them instantly with them or kill them the next turn with them.
Yeah, it's a really fun deck to play, and I think Osmo rank 1 Legend again recently with a mix of that deck and like a mid-rangey Hunter deck. So it's managing to hold its own at the top of the meta right now, and I think a large part of that is Psychic Scream is very well positioned against mid-rangey Hunters, and also the addition of Mass Hysteria has given the deck that much more stability that it really, really needs, because it's not doing a whole lot in the first 5 turns of the game, and then it significantly ramps up in the late game.
Yeah, a big thing with the deck is that you largely weren't doing anything for the first 4 turns. It felt like a lot of the time you weren't doing anything for the first few turns, and the addition of Mass Hysteria means you don't lose to a Hunter Spellstone instantly, which is kind of what it felt like it used to happen a lot of the times. Is if they had a fully powered Spellstone, your Psychic Scream was just a bit too far away to be able to get there in time before the Hunter dealt too much damage to you.
Yo, can we talk
Yeah,
about how good that card is? Can we talk about how good
Which
Mass
one?
Hysteria is?
I thought we were going to talk about Spellstone.
Oh, well,
That's
it's
like,
Hunter
okay.
Spellstone.
That's really good too.
Hunter Spellstone, proven entity. Mass Hysteria, new card, still fantastic. It feels like a 5-mana light bomb a lot, except except sometimes your opponent discards Deathstalker Rexar. So
Yeah, I mean it's also I feel like it has the potential to get less good as people learn better how to build board states against it. But in a lot of situations, it is just kind of kill everything on the board. I've had some situations recently where it did not necessarily do what I needed it to do, but yes, it is a very key part to the strategy of just staying alive long enough to play out your big threats. Your big threats die, and then Spellstone brings them all back. Which I guess.
So I played the deck a little bit, so I understand like how it works generally. Like you do nothing, do nothing, do nothing. Suddenly all minions are dead. But there's a lot of nuance inside of different games and different matchups. So like I know there's a bunch of different main plans that the deck has, so kind of just walk me through like what the different plans of the deck are.
Okay. So the way I look at most of my matchups is I have two different strategies I'm looking to do when I go into a game. Obviously it changed based on the cards you draw and the order at which you draw them, but the strategy number 1 is usually going for a Spellstone plan in which especially against decks like Hunter, where you just kind of stay alive, and Hunter usually has a really hard time dealing with a fully upgraded Spellstone that brings back multiple large minions, and usually that's good enough to kill them. So that's a strategy you employ a lot of the time against Hunter, or just the somewhat more aggressive decks, the decks where you don't need to kill them from 30 or 40 life. But there are decks you will play against, such as Odd Warrior, or some of um, the other combo decks that are really good at keeping their life total high, like OTK Paladin, decks like that can gain a lot of life, and it's really hard to kill them in one turn. And generally, those decks also have a lot of board clears, so the Spellstone plan isn't always a great plan to go with. So those are the ones where you might try to set up a specific Spellstone, or maybe not super specific, but try to set up turns where your Mind Blasts are going to deal upwards of 10 to 20 damage, and that's a lot how you win the more slower grindy matchups where they're going to be able to deal with your Spellstones. And then every once in a while, those don't pan out, and you have to go for a YOLO Lyra play, or even just there are matchups where it's kind of hard to kill Lyra, and you can just kind of generate a lot of value with Lyra early, and that can kind of swing a game in your favor just by getting a bunch of extra spells, because a lot of the priest spells are just kind of very powerful and very solid and can close out games.
Yeah, this deck is weird though. Like I think it's hard to overstate how fluid you have to be when you're playing it. Because my experience, which is probably like number 3.5 on this podcast of the people that are on the show right now, but my experience playing is that every single game is you kind of come up with this macro plan that you think, okay, this is how this long-term game is going to go. I'm going to Shadow Vision on 4. I know what my opponent is doing. And then crazy stuff happens, and you're like, okay, well, I got a Spellstone and see what happens. Well, I'm going to Lyra and see what comes out of it. Well, I'm going to play Malygos on 9, and then I was on the defense this entire game, and now you're dead. And I thought I was a control deck, but I just domed you for 15 with 3 Mind Blasts. GG. It's all very strange. And the number of times I had to kind of pivot Holy Smite as removal, or Spirit Lash with Velen just to Reno Jackson myself, or don't play card because you want your Spellstones to be specific for minions, because that means you guaranteed win. It's all really, really weird. I mean, Cora, you said you played this to Legend. What?
Mhm.
How did you find yourself finishing games versus how you envisioned them when you started them? Did you find it to as well be as fluid of a play experience?
So obviously the easiest way to finish games is to just hit Zerek on turn 9, pull double Radiant plus Velen plus Malygos, and Mind Blast your opponent. But the games very, very rarely end that way. So it is certainly a deck that you need to not necessarily have plan B. You need to have like plan C and D and E sometimes, because things very, very easily will go off the rails with that deck. And it's really, really difficult to play for that reason. But also, it is a deck that can just win any matchup because you have so much removal, you have so much pressure, you have the ability to have an incredible amount of life gain if you're running the Obsidian statue variant, and it can just deal damage to get over any amount of armor. So it's a very flexible deck, but you have to be flexible when you're playing it, and that is really difficult. So I enjoy it a lot. I have a lot of fun playing it. For some people, maybe they're going to want something a little bit more straightforward, but I do think it is just straight up one of the best decks to play right now.
I've
Yeah,
been playing it while I've been practicing my downward dogs. Doing a little yoga, yoga priest.
yogi.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I don't exercise.
Oh man. But you know what? It would be a good deck to play when you're doing past the first 4 turns.
Yeah, but then the late game you start roping and it gets to be Lyra and it becomes much less stress relieving and much more stress inducing.
Oh
Anyways,
yeah, for sure.
like my exercise regimen, this metaphor is labored, so I'll pass it back to Appa to continue.
Yeah, so for a deck that sounds so complex and really thought intensive, what's the reason to bring it to ladder besides just being decent against Hunter? Like, first off, why is it good against Hunter? And then what is the biggest draw to it?
So Psychic Scream is a really good reason why it's good against Hunter. Hunter has the tendency to have a bunch of scary death rattle things on the board, or just have a bunch of stuff on the board that kills you very quickly. And Psychic Scream is pretty much the only card that deals with that as cleanly as possible. So the fact that you have the Hunter deck, which is not killing you on turn 5 very often, allows you to get into your later turns most of the time, and then be able to get off the Psychic Scream and then start dropping the large minions. And the large minions are generally Hunter can deal with a couple of the first large minions, but when you start getting to the fourth, fifth, and sixth 8/8, they have a really hard time dealing with that. And you have, like I said, the Psychic Scream for reset. Mass Hysteria usually can help with that too. Sometimes you can generate random silences to help with that. It's very good at that, while also it has a shot in every matchup. There's no matchup that I go into where I feel like, oh, I can never win this. There are obviously ones that are going to be much harder than others, like the more aggressive decks. The more aggressive decks can give you fits, but even then, you will sometimes get draws that are able to kind of go toe to toe with the aggressive decks. And if you can make it out of the early turns at a relatively high life total, then you can still win those matchups, which is a thing that I'm constantly looking for in a deck. Is it beats the most popular deck handle very often, and also has a shot against pretty much everything, because those are generally decks that you want to be playing on ladder. As well as, also, I enjoy the randomness that you get sometimes with Lyra, or just being able to calculate things, or like calculate your odds of resurrecting certain minions, and just thinking about what cards I can draw that goes with what's in my hand, and making game plans out of that. So I put, it's kind of fun controlled randomness. You have a lot of control over the things that happen in the deck, but there is randomness, so it doesn't feel like I'm enacting the exact same game plan every single time I play the deck.
Yeah, I mean, thinking is fun, and I like winning because I feel smarter. And when I play this deck, I'm like, I did a smart. I win now. And sometimes, I'll play other decks. Like Raza Priest. When I played Raza Priest, I mulliganed for Raza and doing Kazakus. Anytime a card said draw a card, if I wasn't going to die, I played it, and then I killed my opponent in the face. And as fun as that was, because that's where you kill people, is in the face. This deck, you work a lot harder for it, and you have to think about how all these different pieces fit together. It's interesting. It's different. It stretches different muscles because constructed a lot of the time, especially in the Bakugan metagame, you try and figure out how does this matchup play out every single time, and is there a way I can buck that trend, or how do I win when it goes as I expect it to? Whereas limited formats like Arena or Draft and other games are all about figuring out new situations every time, and this feels like a limited format in a constructed game because the way the game evolves is going to be different every single time because of the random elements, because of the game plan differences, and because how a game can play out and how it does have so much variance between them. What have you found, Cora?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a deck for everybody, but I found that the worst matchup is probably Odd Rogue. I haven't actually played it very much against the new version of Midrange Hunter that's come to be. It was very, very good against Death Rattle Hunter, which is why so many people started playing it. Psychic Scream is just insane against Kathrina boards, against Devilsaur Egg boards. Against Midrange Hunter and Death Star Hunter, I think it's probably not as good because those decks are more aggressive. But like Bot was saying, sometimes you just get a hand that can beat everything. Sometimes you Shadow Essence into a statue, you Servitude it, and suddenly nothing can kill you. It is definitely a deck that has a lot of variance, but it's also a deck that is just like so incredibly sweet to play. I don't know. I love playing with cards that do cool things. Lyra is a super fun card to play with. Zerek's Cloning Gallery is an insanely powerful card, and it's a lot of cards that we haven't had a chance to play with past. Mass Hysteria being a new card, and not having a ton of new cards be very viable right now. This one that you do get a chance to use, and it's just a really solid option. And it's not the only priest deck you can play right now. Control Priest is very good as well, but I do think this is a version of Priest that has just a stronger win condition. So if you want something that can just straight up kill people, Zerek's Priest is the deck that's going to do it.
Lyra is my favorite card from the last year, not close. It is far and away the card I enjoy playing the most.
You mean the Priest Auctioneer is your favorite?
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
You got some rogue in
So-
my priest. You got some priest in my rogue.
3/5, and it costs as much as Auctioneer used to.
Oh, moment of silence.
Man, that's a throwback. Yeah, so we've kind of already covered this next question that I was going to ask, which was what does it beat? And I mean, the slow decks beats the hunters, and then the other half of this question is what does it lose to? And it's the quicker decks like
Odd
Odd Rogue,
Rogue.
Kill
And the other
Odd
hunters.
Rogue.
Yeah, it's if they
Yeah.
you don't want to play a removal spell and then die from hand the next turn, which is usually a Leroy Coldblood, but can also be a number of kill commands and chargy beastie thingies. So any aggressive deck that does damage from hand that isn't super reliant on the board or can overwhelm your board clears, you'd rather play against even Paladin or even Shaman than Odd Rogue, but you wouldn't want to play against them because you've got 2 Mass Hysterias and 2 Psychic Screams and 2 Spirit Lashes, and that's what you got. So it's if you are playing against a deck that can run you out of that stuff, or if Mass Hysteria isn't good because there's a bunch of 0/2 totems on the board and they don't attack or fight back, and then Flame Tongue happens and you die, all these things can play around how you approach the game. Though you are generally favored against Secret and Spell Hunter because you don't care about secrets at all. This is maybe the deck that interacts the least with secrets in the metagame, except for maybe OTK Paladin. It's pretty close. But you're gonna beat anti-minion decks, you're gonna beat slow combo decks, and you're gonna beat general mid-range strategies. Honestly, we call it Zerek's Priest. This is Big Priest with Mind Blast, and we all need to make peace with that this is a Big Priest deck. And if you have a visceral reaction to the phrase Big Priest, first of all, there's no Barnes, calm down. Second of all, that's what this deck is. This is, we Shadow Essence big things, we bring them back with Servitude, we bring them back with Spellstone, and then they kill you. This is a Big Priest deck that just happens to play a 9 mana, get all my stuff at the same time, and it's all little, but it combines together to make you dead now.
I prefer
it's Big
Spellstone
Priest.
Priest.
It's Big Priest that doesn't get to cheat with
Plus
bars
effect.
and you charge, which after playing so much Wild, man, those cards are toxic.
Yeah.
Spellstone Priest makes me feel less bad about playing the deck.
What's
It's-
bad
Instead
about
of
my
calling it-
decisions?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
so
it's
the-
fairish, but just it's still trying to be a little unfair. We're still mind blasting people for 40. We're just not getting a 10-10 on turn 3.
You're doing the fair thing where you're like managing your opponent's stuff and trying to control the board, but the win condition feels unfair sometimes, where it's not really. But
Mhm.
I think the kind of the category where I have the most trouble with, which is kind of what kept me away from playing the deck, because whenever I like bring a deck to ladder, I want to understand like why it's built the specific way and like what the best build is and how I can tinker around with numbers. And with this deck, I have no idea what build I'm supposed to be playing or why certain minions are in these builds. Like some play grizzlies, some play statues, some don't play Ziliacs, some play just random stuff. Like why are different versions built the way that they are and like what are the pros and cons of building them in different ways?
So it's kind of an interesting way to pose the question. I don't know that I have a great answer for you. Personally, I play the version with Shadow or Death and Statue. I've seen a lot of versions play Grizzly, and it makes a lot of sense because it's a cheap taunt minion that kind of helps sure up your early game a little bit better, especially if you're able to play a Grizzly and then resurrect it quickly. I was playing a version with Power Word Shield for a while, just as kind of a replacement for the early versions that had Thalnos in it, because Thalnos was always terrible to resurrect off of Spellstone. But I like Death in the deck a lot because it helps out again. It's a very good tempo play, and also if you're playing against like a big spell mage, you can guarantee getting a Velen in your pool by saving the death for it. Just it has these weird corner cases, and it kind of helps swing the game back in a way when your opponent gets a very um, kind of high rolls a start that you're not expecting. Um, but I definitely see the merits for having Grizzly in it. And then I was also just kind of looking at HS Replay to see a few of the different versions and get an idea of some of the other cards. And I saw a list that had both Mass Dispel and Vivid Nightmare in the deck. And I kind of like the idea of Vivid Nightmare. It seems potentially quite powerful. But
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
not
version
fully
that
sold on it.
Taylor was at 57 and she took 80 from a death coil from the Vivid Nightmare version.
Yep, that version will do that.
So
Wow.
yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know why Mass Dispel and Vivid Nightmare necessarily go in the same deck, because if it feels like Vivid Nightmare is really pushing the combo feel to it to try to get your Mind Blasts to do a bunch of damage, and then Mass Dispel feels like a card where you're trying to push the spell stone to get all the face damage in after you play it when your opponent tries to Void Lord you or something to get all of
Well,
the taunts in the
I would
way.
imagine there that Mass Dispel's probably a card that can buy a little bit of time by like silencing buffs or problematic minions as well as like generating velocity through your deck to get to the Mind Blasts and combos. So I feel like it would work in like both cases there. But this is like what I like to do whenever before I take a deck on ladder is like go through different scenarios and do thought experiments of why certain builds are built the way that they are. And that's something I haven't really understood with Big Priest so far, but I'm getting a better feel of why card choices are what they are.
Well, and also the Vivid build plays 4 minions. Plays Radiant, plays Malagos, plays Velen, and Ziliax. Your spellstones are going to hit every time. Your goal is to combo. You are a combo deck. It plays double powered shield, so I imagine that and the Master Spells are really just for cycle, and only one Eternal Servitude is a different deck. Like, it's honestly just a different deck. And I think it has a similar shell, but is really trying to accomplish a different thing. What
Yeah,
has your experience been?
It's much more burn damage oriented than the Obsidian Statue version, which can just kill you on board. Can resurrect Lich King, get a bunch of Death Knight cards, Obsidian Statue. This one is looking to just jam Witchwood Grizzlies and survive to, or no, the one is looking for Witchwood Grizzly jamming. With the Vivid Nightmares is just straight up trying to kill you as fast as they can from hand.
Yeah, like.
Right, so I have
Go ahead.
2 more questions before we close out this decksplanations. We have passed 2 hours. Oh my god, it wouldn't be a Coin Concede episode if we're not past 2 hours. Let's be real.
People need their content.
So
People need
what
their
are we?
Cora.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. So what are we looking for in the mulligan here? Because I feel like mulliganing with this deck is super important.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, I think. The cards I keep are the ones I can play early usually. So Radiant, Gargoyle, Shadow Visions, and then kind of Shadow Essence is not really an early game play, but if you're keeping Radiant and Gargoyle, that's kind of what you're trying to get to because you want to get a scary minion in play that they need to deal with. Not all my priests. I used to say that I didn't like keeping Shadow Visions in the more Dragon combo priest decks because that was more of a card you didn't necessarily know what you were getting early. But a lot of times your early game is kind of already determined if you know what your plan is going into the matchup. So being able to keep Shadow Visions and having a play on turn 2 to be able to spend your mana and be able to develop your game plan early is really good for keeping Shadow Visions. And then just Gargoyle is a great turn 3 play just because the coin does so much for your deck and just upgrading your spell stones and allowing you to develop your late game stuff a turn earlier is just really huge. And then some kind of or not necessarily corner case scenarios, but if you think you're playing against a Spellstone Hunter deck, or kind of just if you're playing against a Spell Hunter deck, Mass Hysteria is a fine keep. Or if you feel like Psychic Scream is going to be quite good in the matchup, then you can also keep that, assuming you have some stuff to do early game. And then if you're on coin, there are matchups where I keep Lyra, just because being able to generate some value is sometimes useful, but it's pretty rare that you can keep a Lyra. There are just like hands that contextually Lyra can be quite good, especially if you have like a Radiant in the hand too, and you think the Radiant might survive, which obviously doesn't usually do, but yeah, there's a lot of things to think about. But if you're just general case, I say Radiant, Gargoyle, Shadow Visions, Shadow Essence.
I'd like to add to that. Radiant is fantastic against aggro. You're always going to keep Radiant when you're playing against like a rogue, a hunter in particular. Against, say, a warrior, any deck that you know is going to deck, you want Zerek's Cloning Gallery. You keep that in the mulligan against warrior. You Shadow Visions for it as early as you can, because the most important thing that you do against control, so control priest, control warrior, big mage, is just jam Zerek's and get the minions in your res pool, because you are very likely not going to be able to kill them outright from the OTK. Usually you just don't have all of your minions in the pool by turn 9. You're going to draw some of them. So you need to start getting those really powerful boards in play. You need to visions for additional spell stones. You need to be able to res the Lich King and get multiple Death Knight cards. Like Velen, or not Velen, excuse me, Zerek's Cloning Gallery is absolutely pivotal against control.
How do you
Yeah, I
play
like
the
that too.
mirror? Because you don't want to cloning gallery and then
Get
get
lucky.
screamed. Like, do you cloning gallery on 10 and hope for 1 mana and Spirit Lash? Maybe like you kill all your own stuff.
You can. Usually you will have a Radiant in the pool, and you can almost guarantee Spirit Lash by that point. But usually against the mirror, Shadow Essence is great. Shadow Visions is great. Zerek is great. It's just a race. You just need stuff before they get stuff. And that's a matchup where they're not going above 30, so you can OTK them with Mind Blast pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah,
Unless they're playing Quest.
I think one of the main reasons that
Which
we're
happened to me.
that we're talking about this deck is because Druid is gone, and Druid was the class that would out armor you and kill you faster, and also take your deck. So
Yeah,
I
Druid
still
did
like
aggro
this deck
control.
against Druid.
Druid did aggro control, OTK, and like board control better than every other class. So
Mhm.
now that we don't have to worry about them, we got a lot of stuff coming out of the woodworks.
Yeah, I
Um,
think while I think this deck was pretty good against Druid, I think that Druid was better at everything else. Like it was
Yes.
just good at being a good Hearthstone deck, so you should probably have just been playing Druid.
yeah, so I have one last question here, and I'm gonna start with Hat, and then we'll go to Bodicus, and then Cora. What are some tips or tricks that you have or have found with the deck that aren't super obvious? Whenever you started playing the deck a good bit more.
All right, so first of all, you should probably record all your games because something goofy will happen every single time. Second of all, this is more obvious than most things, and I'm going to have the simplest advice because I've played this deck the least. Don't Shadow Visions on 2. Don't do it. It's not what that card's for. Card's to go get an answer, not to ask a question. So you keep it in your mulligan, but unless you really know what you're playing against on turn 2, I wouldn't cast it. Bodicus is making faces. Bodicus, why are you making faces?
He is making a
I don't.
face.
I always Shadow Visions on 2 because almost always Shadow Visions on 2, but I know what I'm getting, what I want to get in basically every matchup, and most of the time by 2, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm playing against.
Okay, so if you thoroughly know the meta and you know what you're playing against, feel free to Shadow Visions on 2 and get something, but I don't, so I don't. And also,
That's also fair.
this is also a general piece of advice. Count lethal often, because you might have it, because you just randomly will kill people with this deck. So be aware of life totals, because it's a thing. That is
Yeah,
my...
you'll just have like 12 damage in hand from double Mind Blast. Holy.
Yeah.
Even without spell damage, like you just have a lot of burn in the deck.
Yes. And also you play minions sometimes, and when you go face, then they die sometimes. That's my advice. Go face and they die sometimes. Who's next? I nominate Cora.
Okay, great. I'll go next. Okay, so I will say in mirrors, and I guess against any deck that could potentially leave a minion of yours stranded on the board that you don't necessarily want to be there, but that you want for the resurrect pool later on, don't be afraid to kill your own minion. And that's where I really like the Shadow Word Death version of the deck, because if you have a Velen that you have, say, just played from hand and you want it to die because your opponent who's playing Control Priest is going to Psychic Scream it into your deck and you're not going to get it back, just Shadow Word Death the thing. So then you can Eternal Servitude it, or you can Spellstone it back, and then maybe get a keyboard clear with Spirit Lash, or just Mind Blast and kill your opponent later on. Like, you need to have a very specific game plan with the deck, and there are things that you will need to do that seem counterintuitive, but when you recognize them, they make a lot more sense.
It feels like in those scenarios you're investing a lot more mana now to get a really powerful minion for way cheaper later on.
Yeah.
Also, killing your own gargoyle, especially when you do a Zerek's cloning gallery and you might get a Lyra, a Radiant, and a gargoyle. Sometimes you realize you're going to need a bunch of spells off of that, so you can Holy Smite your own gargoyle to get a spell off Lyra, and then use the coin, which can generate mana, and then play a 2 mana spell. There's just a lot of, having awareness that not always you want to be looking to use your spells on your opponent's stuff. Sometimes it's correct to use it on your own stuff, and always know what's in your res pool. Pay attention to that. Sometimes weird stuff gets in your res pool, like when you play against Benedictus Priest and they Psychic Scream their own stuff into your deck so that you draw it, and then you have to Psychic Scream it back into their deck. Or like I had the plan against the quest priest that I was playing against to coin out my Malagos before they could mind control it so that I could double Spirit Lash and kill it. And then they had to Psychic Scream it into my deck. I played it again later. They mind controlled it, and I had to come up with a new plan to how I was going to beat them. But, just knowing, being aware of what you're going to be putting into your res pool is very important, because you don't want to put bad minions and then have your spellstone be lackluster when you needed your spellstone to resurrect some more key minions.
I'm having just such like crazy flashbacks to just really old Coin Concede episodes where Decksplanations was about explaining a deck and not just random Hearthstone theory, and Cora was on, and this is crazy. What year is this? But that's gonna do it for the Dexplanation segment, I think. We are running a little long, and that's okay, but we do want to get to our thank yous, so I'm gonna let Hat do those.
How long can this go on?
Well, you know, Cora's here, so we are selfishly extending the show to bask in more of the caster goodness by proxy. Because as we all know, if you're on the show long enough, then you become a Hearthstone casting personality.
Lol.
Yeah. I mean, listen, 1 out of 3 times, it works every time. So anyways, thanks to Stefan L. for letting us use his cover. Check him out in his channel, link in our show notes. Big thanks to Wicked Good for deck analysis, Hearthstone for Decklists, Liquipedia for tournament info, and Hearthstone tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs. Show notes for this week's episode are on our website, coinconcede.com. You can support our show, patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.tv/coinconcedepodcast. Join our community chats and our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede. Like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Viriatus, Tacos, Orion, and Donald. And for our Coin Concede section, I'm throwing the hosts an option here. You can either coin concede to someone, or give a New Year's resolution, or both. Take it away, Bacchus.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna coin concede to Asmodai. He finished rank 1 legend, I believe it was on NA, and finished 30th on EU. And considering he streams all the time with no delay, I think that is just a huge accomplishment. And I was really excited to see that he was able to get that finish. He's obviously a very good player, and it was just cool to see that pop up on my Twitter feed, and I'm really happy for him.
Number 1. Appa still typing. Cora is blank. Who do I choose? Appa, you ready?
I'm ready.
Cora's ready. Cora. You go.
I'm ready. I'm going to coin concede to Death Star for winning the Specialist Showdown with his Sweet Hunter deck. I had a really phenomenal him. So if you want to go check that out, that'll be it was twitch.tv/tempo_storm. It was the Tempo Storm Twitch channel. And you can go check that out right at the end of day 3 of the stream. It was just a really, really solid interview, and he's a really great guy. And then also, as far as New Year's resolution, deal with stress better next year. But I also want to compete as much as I possibly can. So I'm working on creating like an goal, but right now I just sort of know like in the vein of where I want to go with it. But I'll figure it out eventually. I have the whole.
You know what they say, stress management, best management.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, they don't say that. I just said that. All right, Appa. Go ahead.
So I want to coin concede to everybody who pops into my stream from time to time, and everybody who hung out for the New Year's Eve stream, because that was a lot of fun. Taylor and I did a stream that went into past midnight where we are, and it was a lot of fun just playing a bunch of random stuff. As far as New Year resolutions go, I guess for gaming and Hearthstone in general, my biggest one, it's a very lofty goal, but it is to hit partner on Twitch. I've been an affiliate for, I think, over a year and a half now, maybe 2 years. And I haven't taken streaming very seriously at all, but I've really found a love for streaming, and I'm going to be doing it a lot more. So just growing my stream in general and just having fun while doing it is the main goal, but I would love to hit partner in the process. And then real life goal is going to be just graduate college after my 5th year of school. And this is my last semester starting in exactly 7 days of undergrad. So it's going to be good to finally get the slip of paper that says I did the thing.
Yay!
Yay. Okay. So, I'm going to, first of all, you all made it easy. I'm going to coin concede to Songbird Cora Georgiou for coming on the show and giving us a super insightful hour-long interview that I did not want to end with a lot of candor and insight to the esports world. As far as my New Year's resolutions, I put these online, but I'm saying them out loud because self-accountability is the best accountability, and that's a real thing that I really believe. So first of all, I'm going to average 7 hours of sleep nightly. I'm going to drink at least 32 ounces of water daily. I'm up to like 20. My bottle's next to me. And I'm going to get up before 9 a.m. every single day. And it's going to be... I agree with your face, Appa. I don't like it either. But that's my life now. And I'm going to value the effort of others, keep promises reliably, get back to people in a timely fashion. And as far as Hearthstone goes, engage with the game just enough that I'm connected with it in a way that allows me to stay positive about the game and the community while being honest about the game's current state. Going to try and balance those two things. So that's what I'm doing for the next year. Also what I'm doing for the next year is figuring out where I can tune in to my co-hosts and our special guests on various social media and broadcasting platforms. So Cora, you're our guest. Where can I find you on Twitter, Twitch, and other platforms where interested viewers may also join you?
Well, crazy that you would ask that, Hat. On Twitter, you can find me Songbird HS. On Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Songbird Cora. And I will be streaming quite a bit over the next month, mostly Hearthstone, but I am in the Twitch Sings beta, so I'm trying to do a little bit of that here and there and help you guys figure out where my name comes from. And then you'll be seeing me all around the Tavern Hearthstone events for the upcoming year. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing after the World Championships because I don't know what the format for the year looks like. But I guarantee you will be seeing me cast some Hearthstone as always.
How about you, Bardicus?
I'm on Twitter at BodicusHS.
Appa?
You can find me on Twitter at appa_hs, and you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/appahs. And for those of you in the chat, if you are not going to bed soon and want to stick around for more Coin Concede Hearthstone goodness, I will be streaming about 15-20 minutes after the show ends. So,
as for me, you can find me on Twitter at RidiculousHat. You can find me on Discord wherever Hearthstone is discussed at RidiculousHat. And that's going to do it for our show. Big thanks to Cora for coming on. Keep calm. And hey, Happy New Year. If you see us on the ladder, Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
Coin Concede.
How are we still messing this up? It's been
Because
years.
Appa's listed as being...
What a great way to start 2019.
It can only get better.
New Year's resolution. Say Coin Concede at the right time.
You should have prepped.
Big move.
Wasn't in the opener.
Now, your victory proves nothing.